today. A tremendous weekend of combat sports is behind us, where the UFC had Diego Lopes defeat Jean Silva in the main event of UFC Noche. But on the other hand, boxing had Terence "Bud" Crawford defeat or dethrone Canelo Alvarez to become a 3-division champion and undisputed. Which fight was bigger? One is being talked about more globally. The other was more action-packed. One left a few questions that needed to be answered about a certain fighter, and the other definitely packed more CTE. All of this and more on today's episode of Matter of Fact MMA. What's up? What's happening? Let's go. What's up, guys? We right back at it. We right back with it. It's your boy Matt, and we are here to go over, react, figure out where do we go from here about all of the combat sports that went down over the weekend. Let's start out with the most popular one. Let's start out with the globally probably the largest fight of the weekend. Maybe not the most action-packed, but the largest of the weekend, where Terence "Bud" Crawford defeated Canelo Alvarez to become a 3-division champion and undisputed. This fight was also promoted by Dana White via Turkey. What a fight, man. It was a great fight. You know, when you're talking about like comparing it to like Diego Lopes versus Jean Silva in mixed martial arts, you're not going to get much of a comparison from that standpoint. You're just not, bro. The action is too big. It's too great in mixed martial arts in the UFC when you're just talking about someone getting their brains bashed out and hit with elbows and there's blood and cuts and all of this stuff and guys flexing or guy gets punched in the head after the fight ends. That's the chaos that we have in mixed martial arts. Boxing, a little bit different, right? A little bit different. And in this main event, while it definitely had its moments, especially like round 9, where both men really started throwing down, what was very interesting about this is that I believe, so Terence Crawford wins via decision, okay? And I believe Canelo Alvarez is definitely a classy fighter, world class, but also classy. In a sense, he knows how to lose with grace and with poise, even though he doesn't lose a lot. You know what I'm saying? So with that being said, the vibe that I got when that fight ended and once they left the ring, post-fight press conferences, things of that nature, Canelo Alvarez knew he lost that fight. He's a classy individual. He's always been that. But I just don't see if there was some sort of inkling, a twinkle in his mind that he won that fight. Just the slightest little, maybe I did. Maybe. I don't think we would have got the Canelo that we got at the post-fight press conference. That Canelo told me that I'm not saying he took Terence Crawford lightly, but he did not think Terence Crawford was going to be that difficult to defeat. I don't think he thought he was going to be that difficult. I believe that he truly respected Terence Crawford and he knew he was going to bring the fight, but I think Canelo thought, especially given the devastating body work, the devastating power shots he was sending to the body. And then he caught Terence Crawford with a straight right hand that was solid, would have floored most men. You know what I'm talking about? Most men would have been hitting the canvas, you know what I'm saying? Laying down, going nappy noo time, you know what I'm talking about? But bro, not Terence Crawford. And I really believe that Terence Crawford's skills and abilities, where he was able to continuously evade Canelo's power shots or take them on the gloves, it was second to none, bro. That ability by Terence Crawford was amazing. The footwork to continue to move away from Canelo. And Canelo began to throw punches where he was anticipating where Terence Crawford's movement was going to end. So whichever direction Terence Crawford was moving toward, Canelo was throwing ahead of time, hoping to intersect with Terence Crawford's head, you know what I'm saying, with his face, you know what I'm saying? But Terence Crawford took most of these blows on the gloves. Tremendous defense by Terence Crawford. So Canelo began to work the body. And these were hard, powerful body shots, you know. But Terence just ate them. He ate them like it was lunch. You know what I'm saying? He ate them like a snack. He ate them like a 8-count pack of pizza rolls. You know what I'm talking about? And them they don't even come in an 8-count, but the 8-count comes when you done dove in the bag of the big hefty count. You know what I'm saying? All that's left is 8, but you're hungry and you got to dig off into it and you go to town. That's what you do. But that's what I'm saying. Terence Crawford was eating those body shots, which was quite amazing. Now, when you look at the punch count, Terence Crawford by far had more volume. Not by much, though. Not by much. A lot of the CompuBox stats are estimating that he only landed anywhere from like 20 to 25. I saw one as low as 19. More shots than Canelo. Now, Canelo by far had the more powerful shots. But I believe the overall eye test of the fight, Terence Crawford's movement, the way that he continuously picked at Canelo Alvarez with his jab, and then he was throwing these combinations where Canelo Alvarez was launching hard, powerful shots, but single shots at a time. Maybe you might get a 1-2, but most of the time it was single power shots. Whereas Terence Crawford was doing 3 to 4, not really necessarily 5 too often, but 3 to 4 punch combinations over and over again. And then, like I said, later in the fight, both men got into a firefight. And the way that they were dodging the matrix of punches that was being thrown at them was quite amazing. But at the end of the day, Terence Crawford is now the unified champion of the world. He is a 3-weight division champion. You know what I'm saying? And what more are you going to say? I believe his record now is 42-0. And it's like, I don't really know who he can fight next. And, of course, he can always do a rematch with Canelo. There's always big money there. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if Canelo will. I'm sure he wants the rematch, but I'm not sure if his people will advise him to take the rematch. You know what I'm saying? Because losing twice to Terence Crawford, because, I mean, Canelo's already wealthy. What more do you want? He's already wealthy. He doesn't really need the money like that, right? Money of a rematch fight. He's already wealthy. So it's more about if Canelo and his team feel he can beat Terence Crawford. Because if he comes back and he loses to Terence Crawford again, 2 losses in a row, it's time for him to hang up the gloves, you know what I'm saying? Just from an optics standpoint. You know, this is Canelo Alvarez, you know what I'm saying? But we will see what he will end up doing. And I don't really know who Terence Crawford can fight. Yeah, there's a lot of tough guys in those weight divisions. There's a lot of extremely good fighters. But at the same time, when you just fought Canelo Alvarez, with how Bud Crawford is built, he wanted the recognition. He wanted to be acknowledged as the GOAT. He wanted a payday. This is the largest payday he would have. Definitely not the largest Canelo would have, though. But at the same time, I think Terence Crawford got everything he needed. Got everything he needed in that fight. And I don't really know where he would go or who he would fight now, with the exception of doing a rematch with Canelo. But I don't know if Canelo will accept that. Because there's a lot of really tough guys that Terence Crawford could fight, and even undefeated guys that he could fight. But what does it do for him? And not saying he would ever lose, because, I mean, the man's undefeated. But if he was to lose that, You beat Canelo Alvarez, and then you go out there and lose to a guy that has a lesser name, that is not known at all by the boxing, the casual boxing fans. You know what I'm saying? So we will see how that goes down. Very, very interesting. Fight was on Netflix, so it was free. As long as you can afford that hefty subscription fee of Netflix, which just keeps going up and up and up and up. But nevertheless, man, great fight. One thing I will note is you looked out in the audience, very strange groups of people in the front row sitting with Turkey Al-Rashid, right? We had Turkey in the front row. We had Jason Statham sitting by him. At one point, Mr. Beast drug his carcass out there, his extremely wealthy carcass, and he was sitting by Turkey Al-Rashid and Jason Statham. Then I look up again, and there's Big Money, Daddy Warbucks, $7.7 billion from Paramount, Dana White out there, and Dana White did not look enthusiastic. He did not look happy. He looked like he made a mistake. He looked like he was sitting there thinking, man, you know what I'm saying? I think at the end of the day, boxing was Dana White's, he's on record saying boxing was his original love. But honestly, I think boxing is another vehicle for Zuffa to have a cash grab. And I don't really think that they're truly, really into it. But if Turkey comes calling, Turkey comes knocking with the paper, with the paper, Dana White's going to go out there and promote the fight and get it done. But he did not look excited sitting out there during the main event out there in the audience with Turkey Al-Rashid. Nevertheless, that was that, because I'm not even tripping, on the undercard or any of the other fights. Walsh won the co-main event, but that's that. Let's move over to UFC Noche. Where in the main event, Diego Lopes gets back in the winning column as he defeats Jean Silva in the second round via KO. Via devastating elbow. Caught Jean Silva. Jean Silva collapses, almost falling forward, but collapses up against the side of the cage and falls to the floor. Diego Lopes gets on top of him, delivers the final blows. Referee stops the fight. Outstanding matchup, man. Outstanding. What was very interesting about this is you had two Brazilian fighters, but one fighter in Diego Lopes who left Brazil at the earliest of early ages and was raised in Mexico. So even though we had two Brazilians in the main event, Diego Lopes is like an honorary Mexican, right? And he embraced it as such. Fight goes down in Texas. He comes out. He's got the cowboy hat on. He's got the whole deal, bro. The homie looks cool, right? He's got the mullet. He's got the stash now. This is some wild stuff. You got Jean Silva coming out there to DMX. He's barking. He's hyped up. He's making everybody wait for about 5 minutes more time than we needed to for a walkout. But that's Jean Silva. That's why we all like him. And in that first round, Diego Lopes gets Jean Silva to the ground early because Jean Silva made a wild movement as he normally does. Diego Lopes got him to the ground, mounted him, and just started delivering punches. Just started to try to cinch up, tried to move toward possibly a submission, but just kept battering him with punches. And no matter where Jean Silva moved on the bottom, Diego Lopes was ready. But somehow, some way, that dog is always present. That dog is always present in Jean Silva. He somehow muscles his way back to his feet. Not a ton of technique in that, but he muscles his way back to the feet, and he gets right back into this fight. And there were moments, even going into the second round, before Jean Silva was finished, where he was kind of coming on strong to Diego Lopes. He was kind of, he was landing a lot of shots on Diego. And while Diego was eating them because he's got a heck of a chin, definitely needs to be discussed. I believe it was mentioned on the broadcast, the chin of Diego Lopes, because he ate a lot of powerful shots that we've seen Jean Silva put down many a men using. You know what I'm saying? But Diego Lopes ate those. And so for a moment, I was like, wow, Jean Silva is really that deal. He's really that dude. He might actually go out here and defeat Diego Lopes. But sooner or later, I believe what happened, and I believe he's said as much since then on his socials. Jean Silva, the moment, the hype, the hypeness, the adrenaline of this fight, there was a lot of bad blood going into this fight between the two teams. I think it got the best of Jean Silva, and he got a little bit overzealous, you know what I'm saying, and made a few mistakes toward the very end, and Diego Lopes capitalized on it and knocked him out, finished him. Then while Jean Silva's on the ground, Diego Lopes is making his way over to Jean Silva's team. As the broadcast pointed out, it looked like as if he was going to make amends. I don't know what happened. I don't know if that was his original reason to walk over there and make amends, but things went left. And they started jawing each other, and then Jean Silva, who still concussed, recognized or realized what he thought was going on. He stands up to go at Diego Lopes. Diego Lopes turns his back to him to walk away because he's not aware of what's going on. Jean Silva mugs him in the back of the head. It was wild, bro. Nevertheless, dude, both men got cut up. Both men, there was all types of blood in the octagon. It was really a blood and guts main event. Quite different than the Terence Crawford, Canelo Alvarez main event. But still. And where do they go from here? Now, for Jean Silva, let's keep it honest. Let's be real. The team fighting nerds got to make a comeback. Now, Carlos Prates has already bounced back in the win column, and he's moving forward. He's all gas, no brakes, you know what I'm saying? But at the same time, Caio Borralho and Jean Silva, they're going to have to pivot. They'll definitely be back. That team, it's too popular right now for them not to bounce back. But I don't see either loss really being a bad thing because both men are still young in their career, Jean Silva and Caio Borralho. You know what I'm saying? So I don't really see that being a huge issue. They go back out there, a couple of big wins, maybe two, maybe three at the most. Either one of them could be right back there trying to challenge for the championship. Given the way these divisions have been laid out, maybe. So, that's that. But with Diego Lopes, Diego Lopes holds his ranking spot. He's still up there. Now, of course, they can't do any sort of a rematch with Alexander Volkanovski right now. But if Volkanovski goes out there and he takes an L to Lerone Murphy or whoever he might fight next, there might be a case for Diego Lopes to slide in there and challenge for the championship. They're not going to have him challenge Volk, but there might be a chance, though, if someone is able to beat or dethrone, maybe I should say, Alexander Volkanovski. So we will see where that goes. In the co-main event, real quick, this really wasn't a bad fight card. It just got overshadowed by everything that was going on with the boxing match. But in the co-main event, Rob Font takes an L to David Martinez, who wins by unanimous decision. Rob Font had a good showing early in the fight, but, from about the middle of the second round on, David Martinez started to come on strong, you know what I'm saying? And, he, Rob Font's a tricky one, bro, because I thought he was on his way out till he got his win in his last fight. So he's a tricky one, but he's still got a lot more fight left in him. I'm not sure where the UFC will place him or who they'll throw him in there against next, but we'll see. Another fight, I'm just going to run through just a couple of fights that were really, really good to me. How about Rafa Garcia against Jared Gordon? That was a good back and forth fight that ended in a KO via Rafa Garcia. Rafa Garcia goes out there, gets a big win, in front of the Mexican Hispanic fans, Mexican Independence Day weekend. Awesome thing to see. Shout out Rafa Garcia. How about this? How about Alexander Hernandez goes out there in Texas, his home state, and defeats Diego Ferreira? You know, I kind of thought Diego was going to get this one, but obviously, and he defeated him via KO. Obviously, Alexander Hernandez is coming on strong, you know, and he's still a young guy, but I feel like he's been fighting forever because, I mean, we first really noticed him when he tried to fight Cowboy Cerrone and got the brakes beat off of him, you know what I'm saying? So, but Alexander Hernandez having a little late run in his career, but he's back in the win column, this time via KO. I think that's like a 3-fight winning streak for him, you know, maybe 4. So shout out to him. He came back on short notice, did his thing. Another great fight was Santiago Luna, stepped in there with Kwang Lee. Great fight. Kwang Lee went in there early in the first round, stunned Santiago. It looked like Santiago was going to be up out of there. It looked like he was going to be up out of there, but true to form, he weathered that storm, and Santiago goes out there, gets the win via KO. So that was also another great fight. Outside of that, last thing I just wanted to bring up, Tatiana Suarez versus Amanda Lemos. Dude, Tatiana Suarez, like, I'm going to just be real, and this might be harsh, but it is what it is. Bro, what a waste. Like, we've been waiting like 6 years for you to get your body in order. I get it. I know her story. I know she overcame cancer and all these things, and she just kept getting frequent injury after injury. But, bro, ma'am, I should say, you need to train smarter. I know I'm no trainer, and definitely she would work me. You know, I'm not acting like I can go out there and fight anybody. But just in my opinion, you always stay injured, and it's kept you from fighting for the championship for like 5 or 6 years. You've been lingering around, you know what I'm saying? And then you get the title shot. Granted, it's against one of the female GOATs, being Zhang Weili, but you just did not have a good showing, right? And Tatiana Suarez has looked like a shell of herself since one of her last returns before fighting for the championship. And it's just like, this is not the Tatiana from 5 or 6 years ago that was like the female Khabib and we thought was going to run through all the competition and win the championship. And so then you take this horrible L to Zhang Weili, which is fine. It's Zhang Weili. But now you're on the prelims fighting, you know, because she, you know, God bless her, but she's an awkward girl. You know what I'm saying? I'm sorry, but she is. So she can't really hold good interviews. It's not really interesting. She's a little bit scatterbrained, a little bit harder for her to talk. And I get it. Not everybody's going to be like Conor on the mic. You know how Conor get down. But it's like, it's just not connecting with her, with the audience. So what would connect her is our fighting. But now she's just like shades of what she was and what she could have been. So she goes out there and she controls, you know, she wrestles and she controls and she grapples. That's what she does. I mean, we all know. Against Amanda Lemos, but she never really looked like she was really trying to get Amanda out of there. There was no urgency, you know. There was no fury. Like, there was nothing to get Amanda Lemos, I should say. I might have messed up her name a second ago. There was no urgency to get her up out of there. Like, you just fought for the championship and got worked by Weili, right? But you held on to your little dusty ranking spot. And what you need to do is show urgency. Go out there, and if you can't finish Amanda Lemos, like, what are you doing, bro? She ain't got that type of wrestling or grappling. If you don't go out there, you know, savage her on the ground real quick and head and arm choke her and get her up out of there, or lay in some 12 to 6 elbows and let's move on. Let's hit the bar. You know what I'm saying? Hit up Patchy Mix and let's roll. You know what I'm saying? But you go out there with that lack of urgency, and it was just a long, boring fight. And Amanda Lemos almost came back at the very end of the third round and got her up out of there, because then she gets fatigued from all the wrestling and grappling. Ma'am, that's your game. We never saw DC get fatigued for wrestling for 5 rounds straight, let alone you only wrestled for 3 and you're fatigued and get ready to pass out. Man, watch out. Get up out of here. We done with that. So anyway, man. But Tatiana Suarez goes out there, gets a decision win over Amanda Lemos. So that was UFC Noche. And that was also Terence Crawford versus Canelo Alvarez, where in both main events we have Diego Lopes emerges and moves forward, holds down his ranking spot, which I believe is number 2 at featherweight. And then we have Terence Bud Crawford goes out there and defeats Canelo Alvarez to become a 3-division undisputed champion. So, outstanding weekend of combat sports. Great to see. Please like, subscribe, comment. Let me know what your favorite fight was over the weekend. You know, let me know what your favorite moment was, whether it was boxing, whether it was MMA, whether it was an interview. Let me know. And once again, I do want to thank you guys for joining me for another episode of Matter of Fact MMA. And I'll check you next time.